Welcome back to this month's Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in technology marketing, brokerage, government policy, capital, construction, and cybersecurity. As always, this is a three-part show. Part one, introductions. Learn a little bit about each of our Roundtable hosts. Part two, we'll dive deep and unpack some of the biggest changes in the industry affecting your business. And part three, what you can do to outpace your competition as we head into the end of the year. My name is Andreas Senie. I'm a technology growth strategist, real estate broker, and third-generation developer. Joining me this month is none other than Chris Abel, membership director at Associated Builders and Contractors out of Connecticut. Chris, nice to see you. Can't wait to talk about that headdress. Just kidding. We'll get there.
Absolutely.
Anna Maria Kowalik, Director of Business Development, SVP, Director of Business Development over at Inland Green Capital. Anna Maria, always a pleasure.
Hello, it's always great to be here.
And Mr. Dan Wagner, Senior Vice President, Government Relations at the Inland Real Estate Group of Companies. Hey. Saul, Klein, and Rebecca Carlson couldn't make it this evening, as well as Professor Darren Hayes. So we're just going to have to carry that torch, which shouldn't be an issue with this group, considering. So, Anna Maria, as you are to my right for the first time, what is going on in your world in Green Capital?
Pace is certainly picking up. We're seeing a lot more retroactive financing deals. And what that means is, in our language, any PACE eligible measures that have been installed within a certain look back period. And that period varies from state to state. Although here in Illinois, we'll look back up to 36 months, can be qualifying for a PACE recapitalization for the properties.
So if I've made improvements in the last 36 months, any smart improvements, green improvements, solar, I can recapture those funds?
You can absolutely do that as a commercial property owner here, yes.
We love that. Is there a cap?
There are always, according to the statutes in every state which enable the CPACE tool to be used, there is a maximum PACE loan to the value of the property. Here in Illinois, that's 25%. So real simple math, you've got $1 million property, you can loan up to $250,000 in CPACE funds. And so, since you've already done the project in this retroactive scenario, and you're seeking to recapitalize, as long as, all the paid invoices and final waivers of lien, an owner's sworn statement, all of that is submitted and proved up. Basically, the owner can then use those funds, since they've already paid their contractors for the goods and services, and use those funds for whatever else they need to do, whether it be PACE related or not. Maybe they want to expand their property. Maybe they want to buy another property. They can use those funds for any of those things.
They could pay the delta in their new mortgage payment as their loans come.
There you go. Yeah.
Dan, you're on the call. How are you going to go fix this in Washington? I need 36 months. We need to go back 3 years
Oh,
for
my
the
God.
retroactive.
Yeah, Washington is in a state of disarray at this moment. As we all know, Speaker McCarthy was voted out. There's no speaker. It's a speaker pro tem. This is the first time that's ever happened in the history of America. The dysfunctionality of Washington, it's just gotten worse. I know that I've had some people call me from around the country saying, "Oh my gosh, it looks like there's some opportunity zone legislation that was put in to re-up the opportunity zones. This is good news, right?" I said, well, under normal circumstances, yeah, but unfortunately, because of the dysfunctionality in Washington, there's probably a 20% chance or less that that legislation is going to go through. So the $1 million question is, who's going to be speaker? Nothing can move in Washington now until they figure out the speakership, because the speaker is the one that actually calls the bills. The interesting aspect of everything is that McCarthy did pass the stopgap measure for the government to not shut down for 45 days, but that cost him his speakership. So now, will the new person that gets in? The question is, how are they going to put together a deal where these very, very far right conservatives are going to vote to keep the government open? Because in order to pass anything, you got to get through a Democrat Senate and then have a Democrat president sign it. So it is going to be, get your popcorn out and sit on the sidelines and get to see a lot of what's going to be going on of chaos in Washington.
I nominate Dan Wagner.
There it is.
Well, and then we can shoot this from the White House, which I would love. So I'm all for it.
Oh my gosh! And the whole presidential election, there's all the different Republicans that are running. Obviously, Donald Trump is way far ahead of the polls. What's going to happen? The thought is that if Trump somehow is not able to run because of the legal issues, that all the votes for Trump will end up going to Ron DeSantis, and then Ron DeSantis will be the nominee. And from what I understand in my Washington connections, if Ron DeSantis is the candidate for the Republicans, then he'll be able to overcome the Democrats, and he would be able to win. Now, the latest rumor I just heard before getting on this call is the possibility exists is that President Biden will drop out at the last minute, and possibly our governor in Illinois, who's a billionaire, would be the candidate for the Democrats. And that could be a possibility. So, because he said evidently he set aside $1 billion of his own money, and that's what he would need. That would make him real. So it is a very intriguing world that we're in right now. So if you're
said it right, put the popcorn out.
Yeah,
sit
right.
back and watch.
Right.
But if nothing's passing and nothing's changing, 1031s are intact. Anna Maria, I cannot believe that CPACE is the only financing vehicle that remains unchanged as far as rates, how much it costs.
No, rates. No. Actually, it's gone up. Because, but it's still a reasonable alternative to what's out there. And so that's the way we like to look at it. And it's a great, gap stop, and just it's wonderful. Well,
the CPACE 1031, politics aside, I will have popcorn. Every election, there's always a lot of excitement, and it's very important for everyone to get out and vote. Getting out and vote, getting on those roads, getting to those buildings. Chris, over in the construction world, design, build, engineering. Speaking of voting, how is your group doing? How are the trades doing?
Well, I just spent $10 billion of my own money on my beautiful
headdress
setup right here.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was gonna get into politics, but I decided to go with some flowers on the wall instead. But what was it yesterday, Andreas? We were at the same summit together, and one of the final things that was said on stage by one of the speakers was, we need to get some adults down in DC so we can get some stuff moving. Right now, we just don't have any. So it's going to take a lot of popcorn over the next year or so, I'm sure, and then probably more after that. But things are going. I mean, as far as the construction industry goes, I've been chatting with a lot of different contractors. I seem to be hearing a lot about, in Connecticut anyway, about a lot of jobs that work is lined up, but they're just not getting started. And I see kind of various reasons going on for that. I know some of the contractors that I'm dealing with, they're trying to finish up. It's funny because usually in April, in May, and even June, I'm talking about a lot of the school work that's getting done in the colleges and at the high schools and middle schools. And usually around this time, those jobs have already been wrapped up, and they're moving on to other things. But I've noticed that, at least in Connecticut, near me, I have Wesleyan University, Yale. I was at Southern Connecticut State University. I go by Central a lot. There's a lot of ongoing construction going on the campuses, a little more than I'm used to seeing while classes are, and I'm talking about larger projects, not just,
Right.
hey, we're knocking out a sidewalk here, or we're working on one building here. I mean, there's some sizable things going on, revamping buildings. I'm seeing a lot of temporary classrooms. So it's been interesting. That's one thing that I've noticed recently. So I think some of the private jobs are not getting started like they normally would for September and October, and some of that, a fair amount of that, is it's the pecking order of who has the amount of workers who can get in there and start doing the job, so the next group can get in and start doing the job. And meanwhile, how do we keep our people busy? Certainly the weather up here in Connecticut didn't help over the past couple of weeks. There's been a ton of rain. So I know a lot of our electricians with outdoor work were in spots where they couldn't work, which is setting their backlog back a little bit. And we'll touch on some of that economic stuff that we you and I were privy to yesterday at the conference. But it's been interesting.
It's an interesting parallel. So there's still a backlog in labor. There are shortages. I do see all construction sites, developments. There's a lot of moving parts that weren't here 12 months ago, 6 months ago. At the same time, a lot of developers' projects are now for sale. But as Dan pointed out, I mean, as the government gets into a deadlock, assumably there should be more labor available to clear that backlog.
Sure.
And with the rise in rates, there should be less construction starts. But that doesn't track. You're saying that the backlog is still longer. So work is getting done. There's things are being built.
Yeah.
Just where are they? And I'll tell you where they are. The 1 to 10 or $1 to $15 million projects.
Yes.
Small scale.
Yes.
So
I'm getting calls about a lot of those now, where people need contractors in a hurry, or people need something kind of moving in the right direction. And it's interesting when you get those contractors on those jobs. I mean, they're quick to eat them up. Where I would say, I always say 3 or 4 years ago, but I can't really say 3 years ago because we were kind of in COVID. But probably about 4 or 5 years ago, when I was starting off in this position, there was more. Okay, how much is this job? What's the job? How big is it? Now it's kind of like, just send it to me and I'll try to get some people on it, because they got to keep their people busy. Heavy hitters leaving construction companies for other companies are leaving. Some of those companies that they're walking away from are, they're like, I can't take. We got to figure it out. We got to keep you on board. So nobody wants to let anyone go. That's worth their weight.
Well, there are commitments that have to be met, right? So the net zero carbon emissions, companies have to get there. Infrastructure has to get there. There's work out there. There's money to spend. Farmers transactioning out into 1031s. Has anybody here slowed down their workday? Is anybody working half days because of the government, because of the rates? I'm busier than ever.
This is inland, of course not. We're blessed to have. We got dry powder to be able to buy what we need to buy. But I will tell you that everybody at inland is in all of our divisions are all very much aware of the interest rates, and the interest rates are not helpful to the commercial real estate industry, and that is
absolutely.
Yeah,
but not helpful. Not helpful. Inland's 51 years anniversary.
56.
Oh gosh, no, 56.
56. So I've known you for 5 years.
Yes.
6 years now. So you've seen interest rates much higher than this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No.
So,
I mean, that's where you're blessed to have a company like Inland, where you have people. All of our leaders are still intact and doing full-time work, and they've been a part of all the different cycles and of real estate for a lot of these years. So they know what to do. It just is. It's harder on the new folks in the industry. And to see it's not going to get better right now. So the storm warnings are out there. It's gonna get worse. So it's just be prepared. And luckily, we have the cash, but folks that are caught short, it's going to be difficult.
Well, call their brokers and then sell to Inland, because Inland is always buying.
Yes,
Same tagline since the day I met you.
Yes, it was always. That's correct.
And well, it's too funny. And inland is always buying all over the U.S. in all asset types, classes. I mean, retail is taking off. Is inland along this track? Are you buying up retail? Is that what CPACE is seeing? Is that what construction is focused on? Is it all a retail world today?
So as far as CPACE is concerned, not so much retail. What we're seeing a lot of is more the industrial flex facilities. There's some hospitality, which is still strong. Multifamily is still strong, despite the fact that on new construction projects, it's a lot harder to get the primary lending. So mortgages and new construction loans make it a little bit more difficult in the development process. But other than that, retail has not been strong, mostly because it's not that the property type isn't good for CPACE. It's more that oftentimes they have a more complicated ownership structure of shopping centers, for example, and REITs, and it's not always the most amenable product for them to use in considering doing their energy efficiency upgrades. So
optimizing assets is a little harder on the triple net side.
Yes.
Too many restrictions, too many people with veto power that shouldn't have it. That's why Inland invented DSTs over TICs, if I recall correctly. So again, and to Dan this time, what are your thoughts?
So I think for the idea of self-storage is still really a great place to be. You're not talking about rent control anywhere for self-storage. The student housing, medical office, those are still all good things. And we are very much involved in multifamily. So we do have one of our REITs is a lot of grocery anchored shopping centers. So the grocery anchored stores, I think, are still what people are looking at. Here in Oak Brook, we have the crown jewel of malls, and that's Oak Brook Center. And because Chicago is having so much difficulty with crime, people are coming out to the Oak Brook Center here, and it's just inundated. I mean, the sales tax revenue coming in from the Oak Brook Center to the city of Oak Brook is at an all-time record, and they have all of the, like, Louis Vuitton has doubled their space, their footprint there. All of the major luxury, Gucci, all that stuff is really just knocking it out of the park because of safety. And then our state's attorney here in DuPage County actually prosecutes the people who steal from retail places, and that's a major benefit. And then our sheriff and the local law enforcement, they have really the most sophisticated cameras for monitoring the license plate readers, the facial identification, and a lot of stuff. And people feel really comfortable shopping when it's safe. Conversely, you go to San Francisco and they're shutting everything down. I mean, it's
free candy. You run in, you run out, nobody arrests you. It's terrible. Well, and not to go onto the politics side, but it's just different places and spaces, and we do things differently. Come to New York, see what happens when you run in and out of somebody's store, right? But what I'm hearing from you is exactly what I'm seeing. Retail, I think retail is on its rise. You've got smaller businesses, newer businesses. People want to go out, food, fashion, fun, furnishings, and experience. Yeah. And it sounds like you've got a mall operator right there that's done that. And thanks to the police department and the infrastructure for security cameras, they can do that safely. We've got a lot of trouble here.
And the tertiary areas, you have difficulty, obviously, with the old malls that we all drive past, that we went to as little kids, and they're now you can shoot a cannon in them and nobody's in there. Birds are flying around, and those are getting repurposed for condos, for self-storage. I mean, a lot of different things. But people have to be creative with their stores. I know there's an old mall like that, a town about 20 miles from here, Bloomingdale, the city of Bloomingdale has actually bought different parts of the mall, and they're getting into the development to make more of experiences for people, the restaurants and everything. They're trying to make it like you talk about. People want to get out of their house and do something, and that's been a big positive thing. If you have a dynamic mayor in a town that has the resources, there've been some really creative things that people are doing as well. Andre,
public-private partnerships, everyone
Yes.
working in together. Absolutely. It's an incredible time. I know there's a lot of there's a scarcity mindset, and there should be. There's troubled waters ahead, but it also means that a lot of practitioners, part-timers, they're all going to drop out because we've been through this. Everyone on this call has been through this before.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity to repurpose, adaptive reuse nationwide is immense. As you just said, that mall converting over to housing, creating these functional centers, experience centers.
Yeah.
Inland is Inland involved in adaptive reuse as well in your development? Is that on the table?
Yeah. We've taken old Kmart's and made them into self-storage, and we're clearly involved in all aspects across the country. Yep.
And you brought up the turning malls into housing, rehab it in California. Did the same thing, big box into housing, which that housing became workforce housing for the mall, and it brought traffic and it brought experience.
It's a big deal. Workforce housing is a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm seeing
affordable housing is a problem everywhere, and that's a great way to solve it. And I don't know if anyone on the call has the answer, but I've got enough office in my neck of the woods, Stamford, Norwalk, New Haven, Hartford. I'd love to see how we can convert all of that into hospitality, into housing, and so on. And when I say that, I wouldn't love to see it. We're actively working on it. We're trying to find the ways and move that forward. Chris, are your guys out there in the GC world busy on new construction, or are they all working and reworking existing sites?
There's a combination. Well, there was always going to be a combination of both, but to touch on what Dan was saying, I'm noticing a lot of. I mean, I have certain smaller GCs. I have a lot of specialty contractors that are starting to do some smaller GC work on their own, because I'm seeing a lot of, a lot of these retail spaces that are not big retail spaces. They're anchored by one store or something like that. I'm seeing a lot of facelifts going on in the area, and a lot of them, I'm closer to the Hartford area in Connecticut, so when you're talking about West Hartford, and you're talking about Glastonbury, and you're talking about Cromwell, and these smaller towns or smaller kind of cities around the larger city, kind of doing these facelifts to some of these shopping centers and some of these things. I know some of the contractors I work with, they're loving it, because it's simple work, it's easy work, and these specialty contractors are basically going in and they're picking up, and they're doing some small GC work, and they're just going in there and they're making these places look amazing. And I think there's a safety factor also there. I know I've spoken to a few different people as far as they'd rather go to one of those smaller retail type spaces. And I don't think that's going to change with the holidays coming up either. I think it's going to be more so where people want to go into these spaces that they can get in and get out, and do what they have to do, as opposed to being inside, a larger facility where some people, ever since COVID, kind of, there's a little bit of shell shock there of like, I don't have any interest in being in a mall, and it's not because I'm a middle-aged guy and I don't want to hang out in these stores, but I want to be able to get in and out of places where I need to get in and out of with my family, and not have to deal with the majority of things that you're hearing about or seeing on the news that might be going on in some of those spaces. I want to be able to control my own surroundings. So a lot of the contractors I'm dealing with, they're working on stuff that's already been built, and they're kind of revamping these things. And it seems like the newer jobs and the newer buildings, they're having some issues with. Those are the ones that they're having some issues with breaking ground on, or the site work is just kind of backed up. And I think a large part of that is, the infrastructure type stuff, which is everywhere I'm driving, everywhere I go, I'm bumping into construction going on the roads. I will never complain about it because it gives me a job, and I can never complain about construction and traffic. But there's everywhere I'm going, I'm just seeing, there's somebody out there, there's a flag or a head sign, and there's something going on. And a lot of those companies, they also do some of that site work. And if they are getting paid off of municipal contracts and they're getting paid off of guaranteed money, then they're not going to go and say, all right, let me clear the land for the Longhorn Steakhouse right now. It's just not, it's not there. So it's just a very interesting time. Not to totally change subject, but a nice thing, kind of a silver lining as far as workforce goes. The training center that I'm tied to, we're continuing for I think the third or fourth year in a row with record numbers of apprentices.
Oh, that's great.
So people they're coming out. It's just I don't want to make, kind of put the damper on that. It's just kind of we're too far gone in regards to how many actual, pairs of hands and bodies we need out there. But it is nice to see that people are saying, hey, this is what I want to do. And we're seeing some career change people. And, so they're coming out in droves to get training.
So labor will get cheaper. Construction will be cheaper. Is that what you're saying?
Wild. I don't know about that. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I think my mute button is about to work. I didn't say that. The employees have the upper hand in almost every sector out there right now, in a lot of factors. And I would say construction, the trades, is definitely an employee favorable scenario in regards to if they're looking for money. They can, and they have the skills, and especially if they have a licensed trade, depending on what state they're in and how they can get paid a pretty solid number, and they could play the game of, hey, this guy's offering me this woman's offering me this, and they could go back and forth to get where they need to go. So I don't think that cost of labor is going down anytime soon.
Well, there was I forgot which study, but they stated that 90% of construction and development is going to be recycled, right? New development is more costly. It takes longer. If we can reuse what we have, if we can build it within what's there, we're going to save time, we're going to save money. The question is, can we legally do it? Can we fund it with CPACE? I mean, year over year, Cushman put out 24% increase in sublet space office. Leasing activity is down, right? Occupancy is still on the rise. Vacancy is still on the rise, and I want to see these buildings get converted. If they could convert a terminal at the airport into a hotel, which they did, it's at JFK, TWA. Why can't we do more with the offices we have? Why do we have to go out into the suburbs further, develop new superstructures? Let's just continue building where we are. And then put wind turbines on top with CPACE funds. So, Dan, I cannot believe it's been 6 years. And I'm going to change gears on everyone here. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Becca and I were at the CRETech show. And from that show, there was a definite shift in the way the VCs, the brokers, the developers, everyone in the room was looking, walking, and talking. And it was all about, how do I glean that actionable insight out of what I'm doing? Not so much what systems can I buy, what can make me better. It was, how do I optimize the information and the knowledge I have? Not to mention AI is in almost every conversation I ever have these days on the tech side. What, if anything, is happening tech-wise for CPACE? Is it still rapid evolution? Is there a new tool that makes it worthwhile? And I'm going to go around the room.
Well, there are some companies that are beginning to take initiative and develop various programs that can be used throughout the industry. And, I'm not as familiar. There are other people on staff who are a little bit more technologically engaged than myself, uh, but but from a high level perspective, there there are things coming up. We're beginning to notice certain similarities in programs from state to state, in how individual capital providers are doing their underwriting. So there are some basic commonalities that can be joined and can uh, be used for the furtherance of CPACE everywhere, as well as creating additional efficiencies, both cost and time wise, across the board. So I think it's still, a lot of it is still in development stages. Some of it's being tried out, by certain groups and tested and seeing how it works with their own internal systems. And but there are a couple of different innovative programs and products out there that are, I think, may have some impact within the next couple of years, perhaps.
So it's not all hype, but there's
No.
some stuff coming through.
Oh, yeah.
It was a trick question. I'm going to get to the all hype part of it in a minute.
Okay.
But well answered. Dana, obviously the policy world's a bit different. And while I hope there isn't an AI tool trying to write policy, I don't know.
Well, what I would highlight in regards to this is that you still have to go back to the basic human emotions of life, and you can have you're talking about AI and everything. It still comes down to conservatives versus liberals, or Democrats versus Republicans, and who's going to be on top and who isn't. And what I mean by that is that, and that all relates to technology. So you have cryptocurrency. You have some folks in Washington that are very nervous about cryptocurrency, and so they're looking at putting more regulations on that. And so it's the regulatory world is a big deal, and then the politic world. You have Elon Musk is under scrutiny by the administration for the X, not Twitter anymore, but X, and they're looking into that more. And so the politics is still the same. You have people that are the entrepreneurial folks in this technology world. I can tell you that they're all complaining about how the federal regulations are stymieing them and they're hurting them. And then you have, and those are, more the entrepreneur folks. They tend to be more, business-minded folks. And then you have people on the opposite side saying we need more regulation. And so I think there's always that whole give and take in Washington that impacts everything, and that's just part of who of our country, and the difficulties we see with all of the social media places where people go to be able to hear what they want themselves to hear, and it's hard for people to go to the places that they kind of have cognitive dissonance. They don't feel as comfortable. If you watch Fox News every day all the time, and you switch over to MSNBC, which I think is a good thing to do, so you can get a whole spectrum of knowledge. That's really smart. But people tend to stick with where they feel comfortable, and they're not going to do that. And so you have more and more of this echo chambers where people are getting into their camps, and you have some people that say cryptocurrency is evil. You have some people that so it's all the regulatory scheme is a big deal. And then in the Supreme Court is a whole nother ball of wax, because you have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that's being reviewed now by a Supreme Court case to see if it has too much power. Where do they get their money from? It's not from Congress. The administration is able to fund them through a separate area, and that's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau impacts lots of technology, new technology that's coming out. So the regulatory world is always going to be there. And that give and take between Democrats and Republicans is just as old as our country is, and that will continue. You might call it AI, whatever you want to call it, whatever the latest glittery thing is out there. It's still going to be reviewed by that lens of conservative, liberal, or Democrat, Republican, and who's ever in Washington is going to dictate if it's going to be less strings attached or more strings. And with the administration with President Biden right now, there's more interest to regulate, and like never before. They have, I think, more regulation than they've ever had at the Securities and Exchange Commission. And then people are talking about the presidential elections and what's good. So it all comes back to just that scenario, I think.
Well, and that's well said. Look, there are always warring parties, and I'll say that, warring parties in the U.S. and everywhere.
Yeah.
If it's profitable or if it's a loser, it's not profitable. Should we do it, and to what degree? AI, or whatever the buzzword is today, is an extension of people, and there is programming bias, to Anna Maria's point, or rather, Dan. Republican bias, Democratic bias. How you program is something that's going to roll right up into AI.
Yes.
Recently, the way I explain it to people, because everyone asks me about AI, is I go, it is your day one intern. It is your day one intern that's not very bright. It'll do things, but you have to tell it and train it and teach it. So what you train it to do is gonna dictate what you get out of it. But what I'm hearing here is that nothing has really changed in the commercial industry. We're just continuing on the same path. We've accelerated in some areas thanks to this tech. I mean, Inland's won a few awards in the tech space, all in its own property management.
Right.
Is that spot on? And legislative, we're going to keep that all people all the time, because that's a people business.
Well, just think about how, DocuSign. How many years ago you had to be there for the wet piece, the wet ink. Now you get to do it by computer. So there's going to be great new stuff that's going to be invented and grow, and it's going to help everything be dynamic. But I don't ever think we get to where the Terminator movie, where all of a sudden they become sentient beings, and the robots take over. I just don't. I'm not into that conspiracy theory. I think it's all going to be a positive thing, and we're going to work together, and so many wonderful things. I pray that we have some really great autonomous vehicles for senior citizens that who can't drive anymore, that they're able just to press a button and they can go somewhere. But right now, I wouldn't get into I personally wouldn't get into an autonomous vehicle, because it scared the heck out of me. But someday, I'm sure that's just going to be part of the course.
Well, just fun fact: in 2026, you will be able to take a flying Uber. It's not going to be called an Uber, but a flying car to the airport for the cost of an Uber. They've already passed the regulations to allow them to fly. They exist today. It won't drive itself, but we're getting there. And I think you're right. We're not headed to a dystopian future where Terminator shows up. We're headed in the same direction we have been, maybe a little faster than some would like.
Now, I have to remember this, though. So Andre, my great-grandfather, he put all of his money into a Surrey company, because my God, when he saw those Model T Fords out in the country, he couldn't imagine them being successful, because they kept getting stuck in the mud.
Well,
and guess what? That didn't work out too well for him. So I have to remember that that's in my DNA. To be aware of that.
Well, hopefully everyone on this call, I know our listeners know best, or know that the best thing to do is buy and sell real estate. Right? That's all we do all day, every day. Buy and sell real estate, maybe build a thing or two. We're lucky over on the construction side. So, Chris, you mentioned last night we were together. We had a great economist there speaking. You had every major builder and capital provider in the state here. Anna Maria is waving at me to say goodbye, because she has
Yes, I want to say goodbye to all the listeners. I have to take off for a presentation this evening. So, and the time keeps increasing on my GPS. Speaking of AI.
Thank God for technology.
Yeah, thank goodness. Take care, Al.
See you next month.
Okay.
So, yesterday we're there. We've got the economist talking to us, warning us about these headwinds, warning about rising rates. Now we've got Dan here in the hot seat, because nobody else is here. We can talk about what the government's doing. But what other takeaways do you have, Chris, that bring us down to?
Just to touch back and give Dan a second to collect his thoughts. on the technology stuff, I want to touch on the technology stuff first. The underlying tone in construction when it comes to the technology stuff, because I'm seeing a lot of a lot of people I'm dealing with talking about data collection apps. They're talking about AI. They're talking about a lot of different things. But the undertone, and this ties right into what Dan was saying about the autonomous cars and all this sort of stuff, and is the undertone with construction, especially when it comes to everything, but when it comes to technology, there's that undertone. It's all about safety. It's all about safety. So, they're talking about all these different avenues. I mean, drone use. Drone use is being used on all. I mean, every one of my contractors that I deal with, they have some sort of. They either have somebody who's a drone pilot licensed, or they have a company at their fingertips to bring in. Yes, is that good for access? Is that good for, being able to, workforce efficiency and all that sort of stuff? Of course, but what's the underline of? The underline is safety. They don't want to be, the less they have to send people up into buckets and ladders and things like that to capture, footage or to capture something, the better. So the safety portion, because in the construction industry, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't matter on the construction side, those companies and those owners want to get their workers home in one piece at the end of each day. Which is its own, obviously, human element to it. So a lot of the data collection apps that are being utilized, which, those were on the rise about 3 or 4 years ago, and now they're in construction. Now they're being used by everybody, or some of the AI stuff that's being used for internal decision making and things like that, all have this undertone of, is it safe? Are we going to increase safety by doing this? We want to be able to work faster. We want to be able to work more efficiently, but how much room for error is there actually there? So, Andreas, when you're talking about the AI being that first day intern, I love that analogy, because for the simple fact that when you put that in the construction setting, when someone's getting on a site for the first time and you got the 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old, you aren't necessarily going, all right, go do this, hop up and, they're asking, have you gone through have you doing competency training, fall protection, all those different things. So anyway, on the technology side of construction, there's always that undertone of, all right, this can do X, Y, and Z, but is it safe? Is it going to, we can't rush something that's going to cause, because those companies that have those issues have a really hard time staying on jobs and getting on new jobs down the road if they're not
Right.
cautious.
Once you have an issue, you can't, your insurance goes up and everything else. And Dan actually alluded to it earlier. These cameras that are going into municipalities that read your license plate and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So while I think the construction industry is going, yeah, let's make it safer, I think many other industries, and Darren's not here to discuss it, and a lot of these technologies came in under the guise of, we will make it safer, we will make it easier, so let us do it. So I think people still need to be wary. And while I'm glad that in construction, at least, there's going to be something that says, hey, the pointy part of the nail goes towards the wood, right? I think that's great. There are certainly applications for that. But then what is too much? And that's where regulation comes in. And that's the big question. Not so much the Terminator, but everything else. How many jobs can we replace, right? You can only teach. Well, we can all go to the supermarket and use the electronic checkout, which I don't use. That's a job. I go to the one with a person on it.
Me too, because it is a job. You're helping somebody
It's a
have a job. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and although I know my wife is watching, but earmuffs. And when I go to McDonald's and they go, "Hey, you want to use the app to make the order?" No, I want to order from a person to keep that job going. So that's always a concern, and that's not one I want to jump on here. At least not today without Dan and everyone else in the space. when we talk about all the AI and the regulation and so forth and all this fear, if I can, what does that do to the 1031 as we're moving into this? Is there any change in the value of 1031s and how we use it? More and more people are getting older, right? More and more people need to take advantage of a DST product.
So interestingly enough, Andre, I just was at C5 for the National Association of Realtors last Friday. A week ago, I was there, and I was doing a presentation with Evan Lydiard. Evan is the director of policy for the National Association of Realtors, and he was able to, he talked more about the nuts and bolts of the 1031. I kind of talked about the politics of the 1031, and what we see is again, nothing's happened to the 1031 right now. But remember, President Biden, he put forward in his budget every year to cap. He wanted first to eliminate, then he wanted to cap it at 500,000, which, as we all know, in commercial real estate, that means to eliminate, because you wouldn't need it anymore, or you wouldn't use it. And so what we're very concerned about is that we are again, this is when I talk to the realtors, I talk about the Realtor Party. I'm just talking about not Democrat, Republican. I'm just talking about if we're looking at what's best for our industry, we have to educate people, and it's perceived in Washington at this moment that it'll be President Trump versus President Biden, and then the thought is that President Biden will win again. I'm not making any opinion statement of that. I just know that it's good to be prepared, and we are working with educating Democrat leaders from around the country to keep them apprised of what's going on with the 1031, because you have all the different members of Congress who have left. There's a certain percentage have already left since we've had the last big dust up of what to do with the 1031. And then you have new staff members coming in. So it's a constant education, which is good for my job. It's good for a job. So we're constantly educating members of Congress, and especially their staff, what the 1031 is all about. And when you have people in underserved communities, when they're able to understand that the 1031 is probably one of the best economic development tools that they could have, why would you ever want to get rid of it? Why would you want to cap it? When you have wealth that gets passed from generational wealth, the 1031 is a big deal for farmers to be able to do that. And, in the whole conservation world is for the 1031, farmers are cash poor and dirt rich. The 1031 is how they manage their properties. So it cuts across all these different party lines, but ultimately, the Democrat, Republican, if you just look at it from that point of view, some Democrats say, well, that's Donald Trump's fat cat thing in the tax code. We need to get rid of it. And you're like, no, this is actually creating jobs. And the big deal is the juice isn't worth the squeeze, meaning that you gain the government, if they capped it at 500,000, they would gain $2 billion a year in taxes. But all the taxes that go along with the 1031, creating a synergy in the marketplace, it's at least $5 to $6 billion a year that it generates, if not more. And so you have a net loss of tax revenue if you cap the 1031. So that's a big concern for our industry, is just to be aware that we have to be ever vigilant and have to continue to work with members of Congress to explain what this stuff is, because there's so many issues out there. You have the battle in Washington. You have so many different aspects of what people look at in Washington, funding for Ukraine war, all that stuff. But you still have to constantly be there, constantly explain what this is. And that's why, like, the National Association of Realtors has a realtor attached to every member of Congress, and it's phenomenal. There's no organization that has that kind of firepower. And Inland is super involved with the National Association, and we are very grateful for the staff and the leadership of NAR. Kevin Brown is, first of all, Kevin Sears is going to be coming in 2 years. Tracy Casper is the current president, and then Kevin Sears will come in. Kevin Sears, he actually grew up with the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee under the last 2 years, Richie Neal, and he was actually friends with Chairman Neal when he was mayor of Springfield, Massachusetts. And so he was able to help us to defend the 1031. Another guy that's going to be coming in as president, the year after that, is Kevin Brown. It's Bill Brown's brother. Bill Brown was president. Now Kevin is his brother, is going to become president. They're from California, and they're African American, and they are business owners and leaders. And the 1031 helps them buy their apartments, and they renovate their apartments by a tune of possibly up to $7,000 a unit, because they're able to use the pre-tax money to develop and make the properties to be nicer than what the community's expected. So the 1031 is a big part of how they're able to run their business, and it's wonderful to have leaders of our national association that know that. Here in Chicago, Jesse Jackson's son, Jonathan Jackson, he actually has done 1031s before, and he's a leader in the Democrat caucus, and that's a great thing. So we're constantly educating members of Congress, constantly out there making sure people are aware of these things. And again, the DST is such a wonderful example. The Delaware Statutory Trust 1031 Like-Kind Exchange. You're able to sell your revenue-producing property and 1031 into a fractional share interest of what we own. And it's no guarantees because it's real estate, but people are able to get mailbox money from that. It's a passive investment, and they absolutely love it. So things are going great. Inland's opening up a new REIT, so that's good. I mean, we're bullish on the marketplace. We're bullish on America and spending and investing. And again, interest rates are very difficult right now. They won't always be where they're at, but a company like Inland has the money. So again, if you guys want to sell anything to us, we're prepared to buy. Make sure you get it.
Too much. The Inland is always buying. No, I see it everywhere. And
yes,
it's true.
Of course.
And there are companies out there buying. And the 1031, you said it once, I'll never forget it. The DST, 1031 DST, is the 401k of real estate, right?
Well,
real estate.
Right, I got it. So because of compliance issues with the Securities
Exchange, you can't say that anymore. I can say it.
You can say it. I can't say that. I can say that the 1031 is like the 401k of real estate.
Right.
I can say that. I can't.
It's a vehicle that is there for a reason. It's a major cog in this wheel that is development, real estate redevelopment. Just as the contractors are there, it is essential. While returns aren't guaranteed, momentum, job creation,
yes,
all of that is guaranteed through that, which is why it has to stay. So thank you for all the work you do in Washington on that.
Well, there's so many good people. The Federation of Exchange,
and NAR,
NAR, and the Real Estate Roundtable, and a lot of the Asian Hotel Association, the farm bureaus, the conservation groups. I mean, that's what's very intriguing. You have conservation, you have labor. The IBEW said that they are a private union and their pensions are privately funded, and so for them, a lot of their pension money are in REITs. And Inland was able to get Baker McKenzie to highlight and show to the unions that the investments for REITs would be negatively impacted if the 1031 was capped, because REITs are able to go in and out of properties without having to pay those taxes, because they manage so much of people's wealth in America that they're able to grow people's portfolios. And that's where a lot of the teacher pensions, fireman pensions, but also a lot of union pensions, they all are part of this whole process. And eventually, when people say, that nobody pays the tax for 1031, the reality is that 80% of the 1031 exchanges end in a taxable event. So the other ones are like farmers and stepped-up basis, that kind of stuff that don't. But it's really exciting to see people when they get it. It's an aha moment, especially the young staffers that are 22. The best way to explain to a staffer is that you know what a 401k is. You grow your wealth tax-free, and that helps you grow. And then when you cash out, you pay your tax. And that's what you do in real estate. So is a 1031 exchange.
And I don't know if you have the figure, but the fact is the 1031 exchange, while yes, it is a tax deferment vehicle, it's going to create jobs.
Yes.
And that, collecting a salary is a taxable event. So the money is there. Yes. That being said, Chris, construction aside, if 1031 goes away, you'll be in trouble. Less contractors, less projects.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
We have a first time on the show this month. I want to give the first CRECo.ai Roundtable Award to the best decorated Halloween house with 1031 exchange funds to the Wagner family there. And I kid. We can't show Inland's projects on the show, so there it is, the Wagner family.
Absolutely, that is my house. Life is too short, and so I decorate for every holiday. So the Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, and 4th of July. And I'm known as the holiday house because, again, life is too short, and we need to celebrate all that we can.
Life is too short, and no matter what, we're on our way up. Onward and upward.
Or are we? That is so funny, Andre. I can't believe you did that.
Admittedly, Dan, I was on my phone. I was on my phone and I was scrolling through it. And was it on LinkedIn maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was scrolling through and I saw that, and my daughter caught a glimpse of it over my shoulder. And admittedly, she's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, that's nothing." Because I knew if I were to say, "Oh, that's a house for Halloween," she would have went, "She's full blown holidays." So I envy it. I thought it looked phenomenal, but I'm like, I can't let this 8-year-old girl see this. This is going to be bad.
Well, that's my hobby. I do all that myself.
I love it.
So I don't hire anybody to do it. And it's a labor of love. And our neighborhood is flipped over where now all the little kids are coming back. And so every time a little kid says, "I love this, Mr. Wagner," I go and buy another blow up of whatever it is.
Yeah. Hey, look, the silver lining of it all is life is supposed to be fun. We're out here, we're making money, work-life balance. Yeah. Love that. Saw it on LinkedIn. Made me laugh. Had to bring it on the show.
Well, 1031 is obviously Halloween. And so that's where that's my favorite holiday for the 1031. There you go. Thank you, Andre.
Right, but you didn't have any promotional Inland stuff in there.
I know.
Next year.
Compliance.
Well, now we'll have a contest for next year.
Yeah.
As always, here we are in October. It's 1031 month. I'm sorry, it's October. No, it's DST month. 1031. I love it. Thank you to our audience, our listeners, those that download us. We surpassed 2,500 monthly downloads.
Yay!
2 weeks ago, which is incredible. That puts us in the top 15% globally of podcasts, showcasts, whatever they're called. So thank you to our audience. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Saul, Rebecca, Darren, Mr. Mendoza, our producer, for all you do for the show. Download our show anywhere you get your audio: Apple Podcasts, Alexa, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, or simply ask your device to tune in to the Roundtable with Andreas Senie. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll see a host of content, including sector interviews with Dan, NAR's chief economist, Keith Lampy, anyone in the space you should be listening to, as well as past shows. And do please rate and review us. It really does help. Thank you for tuning in this month. Thank you for coming back next month. Thank you to my hosts. That's all, guys. Have a great Halloween.
You are the best. And I got to tell you, you have a really good voice and face for podcasts.
Yeah, luckily, we have technology where it doesn't have to be radio. So I've got the face. Thanks, Dan.
Take
care, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Roundtable, powered by CRECo.ai, your source for the latest in real estate and technology. For past episodes, sector interviews, and more great content, follow us on all social media and YouTube at CRECollaborative. You can also find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and share. It really does help. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next Real Estate Roundtable.